Power is a quality of energy. And to me, power, the most powerful person is the one that can be with anything. There are no problems in circumstances. There's just circumstances. I'm not saying they're ideal. I'm not saying they're great. The problem is there's the you, the circumstance, and then there's the resistance between the two. As long as you think you're a separate self, you have no choice but to survive. And that is the default factory settings of the human psyche. As I tell people, in order to stay alive, you want to constantly die to the old iteration of yourself. The whole soul/intention of being human is to liberate the soul that we are.
When you know that you're the soul, then the death of your identity complex becomes less scary because your identification is fused with your soul rather than with the identity complex. If it's fused with the identity complex, no, you're really fucking dying.
So whatever your darkness is the opportunity for you to transmute, because when you transmute your darkness, there's less darkness in the world. And at least you can be responsible for your corner of that darkness. You are unstoppable. You can't become unstoppable. You are abundant. You can't become abundant. You're just dissolving whatever the lie is that has us inhibit the limitless nature of who we are. See, abundance is, freedom is, power is, they all exist. Our role as human beings is not to try and get them, but to remove the idea of ourselves that is the obstacle to them that already exist. Seems like a sweet human being. Let's see if we can fuck that up.
You're about to drop into a live podcast with none other than the mind architect himself, Peter Crone. And Peter Crone has a particular ability to diagnose and assess the actual ontology of any problem. What is real? What is really the problem? What is really going on? What is the root cause? Because a lot of times our mind will spin and churn and try and figure out a solution when we realize ultimately, through the help of someone like Peter Crone, that the problem was in the formation of the problem itself. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast with the mind architect, Peter Crone. So, Peter.
Yes.
You've gone by the moniker, the mind architect, and I think it's a very suitable moniker for you. And one of the things that's become increasingly apparent is how programmable the human consciousness really is. And we can be programmed positively and we can be programmed negatively. And we've just come through one of the most intense periods of intentional programming that I think potentially on a global scale the world's ever seen.
I was so programmed I didn't notice. It worked. Yes. It's pretty incredible how susceptible the human mind is when you have billions of dollars behind a marketing campaign. Yes, but I seem to feel like you do that we're coming out the other side of this now.
I agree. And I think those, as you kind of wake up to the metacognitive elements of the programming efforts, you can start to do a self-examination and start to understand, okay, what buttons were they trying to press? And typically, they're always trying to press on the fear button.
Yes, that's where it starts. Primordial fear, right? I mean, the mass psychosis, if you understand the mechanism if you look at the things that are so imperative for the human existence, right? We're primordially wired to survive. And so if you can have fear at the foundation of anything, it's going to be a strong motivator for any kind of behavioral adaptation. So fear, and then obviously the next one is a sense of belonging, and then a sense of value, right? So we've got this... I'm assuming we're talking about the same thing here. We've got this invisible critter that's all over your Amazon boxes. Are we tracking? We're on the same thing. So everyone's scared. It's invisible. That's a great way to exacerbate fear. And then something about 6 feet. Right? You can't get too close to people, even though all we want is a sense of belonging. And then you're non-essential, right? So it appeals to those 3 primary buckets that we all want, which is safety, a sense of belonging, and a sense of worth. So you strip human beings of those, and abracadabra, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Right. And then there's another mechanism at play where you take this free-floating anxiety that people have that you've generated, all of this fear, this lack of belonging, all of this, and then you point to a scapegoat. You point to an out group, which is the problem that you can actually project all of this feeling that you feel internally. You can project it externally.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this in the macro, but if you really pay attention, this is something that we do individually as well.
It's all revelatory, baby. Isn't that a good word? Revelatory. No? Okay, I thought it was good. Apparently it's not that good of a word. I'm really into it personally, but don't judge me for not... Whatever. Revealing. Is it the British accent? Yes, it's all inside, right? So based on the exogenous form of a problem, just for fun, shits and giggles, who here... Actually, I've got a good exercise. Can I do an exercise?
Please.
Okay, everyone raise their hand. Okay, everyone's got their hand raised? Okay, now raise it a little bit higher. Okay, you ready for the painful part? Why didn't you give 100% the first time? Ouch. Now just really consider that might be the way you show up in life. It's a very powerful but simple exercise. So anyway, that wasn't going to be my point. My point is, who loves the word revelatory? Yeah, let's go. See, now you get it up there. Anyway, who here has any kind of problem? Any kind of problem? Okay, most people. Good. You fit perfectly in the human species. Would it be impressive if you all leave after this talk without any problems? Would that be worth the price of entry? Okay, we'll come back to that. Someone remind me. It's a little new David Copperfield thing I'm trying. What was the question?
That pointing out instruction, I think, is important, though, because what you're doing here really is you're planting clean codes into the operating system. And one of those clean codes, if I could extrapolate from that pointing out exercise, is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Correct.
Right? Like that's like a fundamental clean piece of code that you can adapt. And this is like deep in Zen theory and a lot of other traditions, but it's a clean piece of code.
Yeah. And to your question before about the idea that it's so slippery and tempting to think that everything that we struggle with is exogenous. It's outside of us, right? So whatever it is, if we're talking about the last 4 or 5 years or whatever people have in this audience in terms of problems, for the most part, we're under the impression that what we're struggling with is outside of us. It's usually within our close group of family and friends, co-workers. It's our bank account. It might be something to do with our living situation. And so that's the revelatory process. Can I say that many more times today? It's my word of the day. So it's really revealing where we're under the impression, some of you may have heard this quote that I had, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free, right? So if you really get that, when you come up across any kind of form of constraint, really it's an opportunity to recognize not where there's an external problem, but rather where there's an internal inability to be with something. Right? Do you get that? So whenever we're, in lay terms, if you're triggered by something, invariably the mechanism that a human being is going to employ is like, okay, I want to avoid pain and find pleasure. So if I'm under the impression that something's pissing me off, upsetting me, causing anger, discomfort, then I'm going to do whatever I can to mitigate that, which seems like smart. But actually, I want you to consider it's life giving you the opportunity to recognize where you haven't awoken to your own sense of divinity, which allows you to be with anything. How's that?
That's where you get a really other very clean piece of code that instead of looking outside, I remember in my 6 days in the darkness retreat, the first 2 days I was in there by myself and I decided that everything that was wrong in my life was external. I needed to move from Austin. I needed to change my partner. I needed to do a million different things externally.
Yeah.
And then day 3, I realized like, oh, fuck, actually my life is amazing.
Yeah.
I just need to change everything internally.
Right.
And so that was the revelatory moment for me where it's like, okay, once you get that, like, okay, let me look inside and see what opportunity, invitation, provision is being offered for me to grow and become stronger from. And however, would you say that it's fair that to the extent by which you're challenged is the extent by which the capacity you have to alchemize that into growth?
For sure. Like in the laws of duality and cause and effect, think about it as a very crass example for those of you who are coming here this morning, and perhaps because you were just so deep in your meditation and your breathwork practice and Palo Santo, whatever you're doing in your room, because of course we all do that in the morning, you forgot to go and take a piss, right? And then you drove and it's a little while to get here, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I really need to go to the bathroom. This is a really spiritual example, right? And so the degree to which you're desperate to go to the bathroom is the degree to when you do, you get relief. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Was that too simple of an example? I thought that would be a good one. So the degree to which we have constraint is the degree to which the depth of that trauma, that hurt, is the degree of freedom that's on the other side of it.
Mm. And so in this quest, I think a lot of times people try to find this like easy, no highs, no lows kind of life. And we don't have a lot of big external challenges. And if you look through history, in the big external challenge moments, people find actually deep comfort in that, because there is actually something external that they can actually focus on externally, which quiets the internal challenge. But in the absence of that, we bring up a bunch of internal challenges. And if we do that wisely, it can be productive. If we don't do it wisely, we'll just be constantly scattering back and forth from one thing to the other thing. But it seems like the necessity is a depth practice to really go and challenge yourself to feel what is really scary.
For sure. And I mean, at the beginning of some of you may have heard of, actually, has anyone here done my mastermind? I'm curious if we have any masterminders here. Okay, all right. Tip of the cat to the more evolved people in this group. No judgment. It's at the beginning, I talk about how, for me, again, it's all just my perspective, that the whole soul / intention of being human is to liberate the soul that we are. And I talk about that at the beginning of the mastermind, which is really the introduction to what that journey is. And I say to everyone, the you that arrived at the beginning of this mastermind will not survive the mastermind. Right? So it's a form of death, right? Which for most people is obviously a scary topic. But when you understand it, like to me, it's one of the most inspiring topics, or at least experiences for a human being, because I know for you, for sure, you've been through many deaths. They may not have been conscious at the time or intentional, but then obviously the more you've done it, the more you're like probably seeking it, right? Because as I tell people, in order to stay alive, you want to constantly die to the old iteration of yourself. And so the degree to which we feel these constraints, we feel these limitations, is the opportunity for that form of death to something that currently isn't serving you. I say the ego is the boa constrictor for the soul, right? And so the degree that we look through these lenses, these narratives, these dialogues of limitation, that's what's suffocating truly the boundless, limitless potential that is your divine nature. If you're into that kind of shit, which I think this group is, right? Otherwise, we could talk about, how do you make more money and get more followers? And that's the human game, right?
Is this a problem with fusion with the identity complex, where actually we think we are the separate self rather than we think we are the soul? Because when you know that you're the soul, then the death of your identity complex becomes less scary, less intense, because your identification is fused with your soul rather than with the identity complex. If it's fused with the identity complex, no, you're really fucking dying.
Yeah. Not only does it become less scary, it becomes incredibly welcoming.
Right.
Because that is the raison d'etre to being human, as far as I'm concerned, right? Obviously, it's helpful that I have this 3-dimensional carbon meat suit here so that I could be here today and interact and meet people and have an identity where someone says, hey, Peter, nice to meet you. And I don't just walk past them and ignore them because I have a place in time and space that I'm located. But if we become misidentified with either the narratives or the form, then we're going to be off, right? At best, I tell people you can only perfect that, right? Which is becoming the best version of your limited self, which is what most people do in the human arena, which is great. I've got nothing against that. But if you really understand, like, this is a pretty big space. I don't know what it is, 3,000 square feet. And so we could take this, and it's perfect for an arena like this. We have a gathering, we have a chat, we talk about how cool it is to be revelatory as human beings, and then we slip into an orgy or whatever's next. Space is perfect for that, right? But none of us in this space are probably going to be talking about housing the Olympics in here, because that conversation doesn't arise by virtue of the space and what it affords us, right? So think about the same of your mind, right? Your mind, depending on the kind of narratives that you have within that space, it only affords you the degree to which you can then manifest, create, or build something in your own life. If you're walking around in a subconscious constraint that you're not enough, you're not loved, you're not wanted, some sort of negation of your true self, then it becomes literally impossible, not quite impossible, but virtually impossible to create outside of that space. Does that make sense? Meaning, without sounding too poetic, the words that most human beings are founded upon in the subconscious are insufficient. The words that are in your subconscious are insufficient to give rise to the potentiality of the soul that you are. Can't put it better than that.
So in this process of identification with the soul, it seems like this is one of the ways, one of the control mechanisms. We talked about a couple of them, but another control mechanism is to, in the materialist reductionist mindset, deny the continuity of consciousness, which is the existence of the soul, right? What is it that includes and transcends this life form in this avatar? It's a continuity of consciousness, an individual continuity of consciousness connected to the whole. That's your soul. But in the scientism, which is, kind of run rampant in our culture, we've denied the continuity of consciousness, despite all of the evidence from the University of Virginia studies and all of the things that anybody who's done plant medicine, we know, we and all the mystical traditions, etc.
Yeah.
But if you don't actually fundamentally believe that there is a soul, then I think you really probably are stuck in this place where all you have is the separate self-identity.
Yeah. And that is equivalent to suffering, right? Again, I love to quote myself. Because they're really fucking good, So anyway, as I once said to myself, as long as you think you're a separate self, you have no choice but to survive. Right. So if you really get that, if you are in any way separate as an identity, which, by the way, is illusory, right? That's another great word. You can add that to revelatory, illusory, lavatory. They're all very necessary. But anyway, as long as you think that you're separate, to Orb's point, then think about it. Like, I often use an analogy because I think that helps people to understand. If you have a herd of animals that are migrating during whatever season, and for the sake of making a point, one of the babies or the calves sees some food and gets distracted and forages, which is the world of temptation out there, and so becomes, quote unquote, separate from the herd, where there is the experience of safety, belonging, and all the things that we touched on earlier. And let's just, for the sake, again, of making a point, so that I can be right and sound really smart, the baby stays there for a while, and the herd has gone on for a few hours, so that now the baby is by itself, and now it starts to become dusk. What is that baby's experience going to be when it realizes it's no longer part of the herd and it's starting to get dark? What is the predominant emotion? Correct. Right? So now think about that as an analogy. If you think that the you that is there, which is illusory in itself, it's, without seeming dismissive, you're all walking conversations, right? And depending on the quality of the conversation you have gives rise to the quality of the feelings, behaviors, and then the outcomes that you get. So really, this is all about upgrading the quality of conversations that is the you that you're currently misidentified with. So that calf that thinks it's separate is now automatically in a state of fear because it doesn't have a sense of belonging anymore, and so its imperative is just to survive. And that is the default factory settings of the human psyche, is that we come into this sort of invisible matrix not knowing necessarily, which is perfect because that's the way the game's designed, because as I said at the beginning, the true intention of being human is to transcend the constraints with which we arrive to then discover our true divine nature and liberate the soul that we are. So if you're born into an invisible cage, that's wonderful because that's the game, right? If everyone kind of like, as you came out of the hospital or the womb or wherever, they're kind of winking at you, by the way, everyone's going to pretend that you're separate, but you're not, then you don't have to go on to this beautiful transformative journey that is to me, the opportunity that it is to be human. This dimension, as far as I'm concerned, is all about suffering so that we can transcend suffering and be reminded of the fact that we're none of the things that we're misidentified with. So it's really pretty simple. I don't know what your fucking problem is, really.
So what are some of the other downstream problems and effects of this fusion of your identity with the separate self? Obviously, there's a fear as an initial impulse, but how does that manifest into somebody's life beyond just that initial feeling of fear? What are the kind of downstream effects of that?
It's a great question. So the way I delineate two different, very distinct existences, right? There's for sake of simple language, and words become obviously both the lock and the key. They're the creation of suffering, but they're also the access to liberation. So let's just, for arguments or simplicity's sake, say the ego or the separate self is based in limitation, which then gives rise to, as Aubrey said, fear as the predominant state energetically. When you're in a state of fear, then you have to have suffering, which then creates dis-ease. And I really put the emphasis on the separation of those. Dis-ease is the absence of ease. If you don't have ease physiologically, because this meat suit, which is handy to be able to experience life, then that's going to cascade into your physiology eventually to disease, right? And then dysfunction in your relationship. So that's the cascade of what it is to be misidentified with the human form. On the other side of those constraints, what is the opposite of limitation? Freedom. And when you have a state of freedom, which is why, I argue that that's the predominant product I'm bringing people, is freedom from the idea that you have become misidentified with. When you're in a state of freedom, then instead of fear, the predominant state emotionally is love, because now you're in a state of union. When you're in a state of love, then you have vitality, not disease. You see pure possibility, and then that creates nothing but harmony. Two distinct worlds. And that's the beauty of the game of human experience, is this sort of cosmic hide and seek. So to your question, which is beautiful, when you're in a state of fear, even physiologically, if you understand the autonomic nervous system is predominantly, the parasympathetic and sympathetic, which most of you have probably heard. When you're in fear, you have to be in fight or flight to whatever mild or severe degree. When you're in fight or flight, then the cascade of hormones that goes through your bloodstream, it's not regenerative, it's not rejuvenative, it's not healing, it's not restorative. And so this is where we see the world that we have, which is sick and tired. So sick and tired is really the byproduct of the fact that most people are under the illusion that they're a separate self, and therefore they live in a state of fear. Again, it's really simple. I don't know what the fuck everybody's problem is.
During my 11-year tenure with Onnit, we created a lot of revolutionary formulas, none more revolutionary than our flagship Alpha Brain. It's a product that I take every single day, still to this day. And then after I sold Onnit in 2021, I came across a particular ingredient. It's a metabolite of caffeine, which means that it's something that the body naturally breaks caffeine down into. And it's called paraxanthine. And then I found that ingredient and I said, this is doing a lot of what I wish caffeine would do, but it's not having the negative effects that I experience with caffeine. It's making me feel more alive, more energized, more clear in my mind, but it's also not sending me down that caffeine roller coaster. And then I said, what if we surrounded this with the best natural ingredients to create a really revolutionary formula? And we did it. And so I created a new company called Correct with a K, housed on correct.life, called Correct Energy. And it's absolutely as much of a revolution as Alpha Brain ever was. Alpha Brain worked on the acetylcholine neurotransmitter designed to give you more focus, and this works on the dopamine pathway, which is really like the go mechanism for the body. So whether you're working out, working hard, writing, anything that you're doing, playing with your kids, Correct Energy is going to be an absolute revolution in how you're able to interact with life with the vim and vigor and passion that you know is truly you. One of the things about this product is it just feels like you have more of you available. It doesn't change who you are, it doesn't change your mindset, it just gives you more of the best of yourself. So if you're interested, check it out at correct.life. Is it possible to fulfill your soul's calling, the highest fruition of your potential, if you're in a state that's sick and tired? Or do you have to address that state of being sick and tired first?
It's not possible to be in the state. It's imperative to get beyond it, though, right? So it's sort of the, to quote myself, yes, we're all one, but would we know that if it weren't for the we? Woo! Yeah. Right? So we need the experience of separation and the illusion of fear in order to realize, oh, that's not me. So you can't realize the potentiality of the being that you are when you're in the state, but the state is the access to it. That's why it's such a great fucking game.
How much do you think the fetishization from a psychological standpoint to self-sacrifice, martyrdom, giving so much that actually like you take upon great suffering? Because there's the beauty of generosity and the beauty of giving, and then there's also this subtle psychological like, look at me, I'm giving so much, and like I'm in the I'm such a good person and I'm giving so much. I think both are probably can play and exist in duality.
Yeah, and sometimes not so subtle, right? So again, if we look at all behavior, it's about understanding the intentionality and the energy behind it, because there are many people out there who can appear to be philanthropic. They're very generous or thoughtful, as a very basic class of description, people-pleasing, subservience, any of those particular behavioral adaptations we see invariably is still belonging to the misidentified individual who's trying to garner love and acceptance. If we come back to those primordial needs of safety, belonging, and value, then the way that we try to garner that from people can be very slippery, insidious, right? It can look like, wow, that person's so kind and so generous and so giving, and that's wonderful. I'd much rather live in a world, even if it's somewhat a facade or a pretense, where people are kind to each other, even if it's being driven by a deeper fear that I'm not fundamentally loved for who I am, and so I'm going to do everything that I think I need to get people to love me. It's still looking for that exogenous form of safety and love and value, right? So it's always going to fall short, because that person, however subtle, is still going to have some sort of demise or dis-ease in their physiology, because it's not sustainable, right? It might show up subtly as adrenal fatigue or Hashimoto's over time. And again, the human spirit, and then beyond that, the human form, is so resilient. So if you have a strong constitution, then you're going to be able to put up with a lot of your own internal dis-ease for a while, until it manifests later in life through whatever myriad forms of diseases we get. But so yeah, it's really slippery, because we're blind to our own behaviors sometimes, because it's all we've ever known. As a very simple analogy, again, I often ask people, if I'm working with a group or one-on-one, I say, if you were born with blue tinted glasses on, right? So imagine you got glasses, super cool. There's actually someone here I met with yellow glasses, I think Brad. So whatever, if you have a lens that's blue, what, as a basic answer to the question, what would everything look like? What would the hint be? Blue, correct. You're all wrong. Because if you were born with it, that's all you've ever known, right? So you would only see the blue when you take the lens off. So we're born into this invisible prism, which is our own identity. So we're looking through the lens that is our own blind spot. And so for us, everything seems normal until you realize that it's not. And so that's where it's very slippery. So someone's normal might be, okay, whatever their dialogue is, that I'm not good enough, or I'm less than my sibling because the sibling was the academic or the athlete, whatever behavioral adaptations and coping strategies they've used, that's all they've ever known. And so for them, they just think they're a good person. And I love to be somebody who makes a difference, which again, I'd much rather live in that world, but still, to answer your question in terms of accessing their true divinity, their true freedom, it's the best version of their limited self.
Mm. In this time, not only did we, see the inner workings of this massive psyop, I think some of us became aware that there was something potentially happening that was beyond just misidentification of the self as a separate self. It included it, but it was more than that. There was seemingly some degree, and I don't think any of us can answer for sure to what degree, but intentional malice. like actually people who were intending harm or evil, not justifying it. Like most Bond villains or other people justify it, but there's a few villains out there like Bane or like Joker who just are like, no, like I'm intending to fuck things up.
Yeah.
Like for real.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this briefly before we got here, right? And it was something that I was myself a little taken aback by, you could even say naive, that I thought because of my understanding of human psyches, whether they're adaptive, maladaptive ways that we respond to trauma, that even if someone is, for want of a better word, abusive in a relationship, sadly, typically the male towards a female, I didn't justify it, don't condone it. I've helped many women get out of those situations, but there was a sense of compassion towards the masculine who, if I knew everything that he'd been through as a kid and he was hit and beaten by his father or a high school coach, there's compassion. There's a form of understanding, right? Doesn't condone the behavior, but it brings a degree of understanding about it, right? Does that make sense? But then we see what's going on in the world, and it's like, wait a minute, there's sufficient amount of intelligence for the people that seem to be in positions of authority, that there's a deeper knowing that what actually is happening is actually harmful, right? It's not just being driven by someone's own feelings of inadequacy and mirroring behaviors that we witnessed as kids, that's what a relationship looks like, and just because his dad beat the woman, that seems to be normalized. So, yes, that was a bit of a shock to me to realize, wait a minute, maybe there is a frequency of evil that actually exists here, which to begin with, is a bit disconcerting. But then I actually even transmuted that for myself. And if we look at this dimension that we're all in, akin to a video game or like The Matrix, and I often talk about this game as a hypothetical. If you're a parent and you're watching your kids play, you walk in the living room and they're sitting in front of the TV and your son and daughter or whoever are playing with their buddy, and they got this little character that walks across the screen. It's just like they're there and they go, 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 and they walk across the screen. And then it goes, congratulations, you've reached level 2. And then you're like, well, that was weird. And then they just walk across the screen. It goes, congratulations, you've reached level 3. And you're like, you watch this till you get to like level 7. And all they're doing is walking across the screen. And, you're like, what are you guys doing? Like, we're playing this game. Well, what's the point of the game? You're just walking across the screen. Yeah, that's all you have to do. Right? Apparently some of you play that game.
Yeah, it's a shitty game.
Like, where can I get that? Yeah, so what's the point, right? So then even to the degree that I, in my own system, recognized through my own feeling of like, but I'm a good person, why would there be evil in the world? It's like, wait a minute, that's great. Because the degree to which there's even more adversity is the degree to which we, those who are committed to playing the game, perhaps not the best way, but the more appropriate way, is that we develop more love, more acceptance. So like, who here would go to the gym and be like really pumped? If I took one of my pro athletes who's jacked like Kyle and Bob, and I'm okay. But anyway, if I gave people like 5-pound dumbbells, right? Like, this is an athlete who's 250 pounds. I'm like, dude, knock out 10. He's like, what? Right? It's like there's no growth, right? And so if we look at this on a systemic level of what it is to be part of the human species and recognize the opportunity that having adversity is to our own development, our own growth, that sort of healthy stress, then suddenly evil started to play a part. It started to make sense, Again, it doesn't condone it, but it's an opportunity to see how far can I actually transmute even that. And again, I don't classify myself as religious, but I like to pull tenets from different religions, and here's a guy who's being nailed to a cross. You might have heard of him. And, his love is so deep that he says, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. I mean, how fucking powerful. I'd be like, ow, what the fuck are you doing? So I got a bit of work to do, but you get the point, right?
I think that's such an important point to make, is that, and I've heard this described before, and I forget which kind of master offered this first kind of inception of an idea, being that the devil was the one who loved God so much that he was willing to play the devil. Like I love this force is necessary. So like even as we're creating artificial consciousness and AI, they use what's called a general adversarial network, something to challenge the code constantly. Same as if you're building a chess algorithm, right? You're challenging, you're playing games, you're creating an opposition so that you actually grow and evolve in consciousness. And if you see that the darkness at the deepest level was like, okay, God, like everybody's going to hate me. I'm going to cause an immense amount of suffering, but I'll do that. Like I'll do that. I'll play that role, so that we can actually evolve and expand. If you look at the older crosses, which are just straight up and then straight across through the middle, like a balanced consciousness, masculine in the upright, vertical, feminine across the breadth of polarity across on the crossbar, and then the possibility of ascent on that other side.
Yeah.
It's however much darkness there is however much light there can be on the other side. As Carl Jung said, how far your roots stretch down into hell is how high your leaves can stretch to heaven. So these dark forces are always actually, even if they don't know it, even if they're lost in their own delusion that they just think they're evil, they're actually still serving to catalyze the light. Yeah. So all the villains that we've seen come out of the stage, and we're going to see a lot more over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Fuck them, one, and not today.
Yeah.
As also what Yeshua said, like, get thee behind me, Satan, not today, Satan.
Yeah.
As Max Romeo said, like, I'm going to put on my iron shirt and kick the devil out of earth. Mm-hmm. Like, not here, not today. But also, thank you, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, motherfucker. Because now you've actually catalyzed something in me that wouldn't have been possible if you didn't exist.
Yeah. Amen. Give it up. One of my favorite places on the planet is Carmel by the sea. Who's been there? Beautiful, right? And so I moved there many years ago. I worked with a bunch of golfers at the time, and so that's sort of a mecca with Pebble Beach and all the things. And I walked past this street. I walked past a studio by this artist called Richard McDonald, and he does sculptures. Anyone familiar with his work? Okay. So it was stunning, and I'm not like an artsy person. I mean, it was never my thing, but there's something just resonated about his work, and it's just, he uses Cirque du Soleil performers. So their physiques, their anatomy are beautiful, and he has all of these different expressions of love or possibility or ascendance. And there's this one piece that I always felt so drawn to, being a bit of a romantic, because it was really the story of what's called Orpheus ascending. And it's like this long drape, if you imagine something like this, that's like sort of vertical. And he's holding on with one arm, and then his other arm is sort of like draped down. And this woman, his lover, he's pulling out of the depths of hell, right? So that's the piece. It's this beautiful piece. And I always looked at it sort of aspirationally as like, oh, yes, I'd like to be the hero as any man wants to be. And it was really not that long ago that I recognized that actually it's such a beautiful description of the duality of the yin and the yang, of the male and the female, because I often thought, as an idiotic man would back then, that I'm the hero in this piece, right? It's like... And then I realized, wait a minute, no, this really, to your point about thank you for the adversity that is this paradigm that we're in, which is that the gods had put his lover, his wife, into hell because they were jealous of the fact that he was in human form, but he had all of the qualities and characteristics of a god. And so here he is saving this damsel. And so it looked like he was the hero. But then what I recognize is, no, this is the beautiful role of the divine feminine who challenges the masculine to become the divine masculine. Because in the absence of that, the man doesn't have to show up. And it really changed my whole perspective of the teaching that goes both ways. Because in this patriarchal society that we live in, again, excuse the ignorance of the masculine, we think we're it, right? And that's why so much of what's been going on has not been working. But actually, to your point about evil, the dark, whatever, the frequencies, the feminine that can be wild, the degree to which the masculine is challenged is the degree to which the masculine becomes masculine. Does that make sense? So, you crazy biatches, keep at it. This is awesome. Because, man, I've been fucking challenged and I'm coming back. I'm better than I've ever been. So that is the representative of in Ayurveda, Purusha and Prakriti. And anyone who's studied Ayurveda, Purusha is consistent consciousness. It is the stable, the steady. And Prakriti is the divine, the expression, the millions of bags and shoes. And, it's the feminine that is all over the place, like the weather. But really, it's the opportunity for the masculine to become big enough to be the safe container for all of that expression. And in order for us to maximize and fulfill on the potentiality that is to be a true man, we need adversity.
Amen. I think about some of the stories that have been really formative in my life, and there was probably no story that was more formative for me than Braveheart. That story really just resonated with me. And you think about this and apply this to the conversation we're having. All right, Edward the Longshanks, he was a fucked up person, right? Like he was doing some really gnarly shit. But William Wallace, who eventually became the hero, he was actually kind of cool to be okay with it and just kind of live his own life as long as they didn't fuck with him and his beloved Murren. He was going to chill and just submit to this type of rule. And it would have been, at least as the story was told. Now, of course, we don't know the true inner workings of William Wallace's psyche, but I love the way the myth was told. It required actually that darkness pressed so close into his life. And the goddess that was incarnated in Murren, when they slit her throat, they woke a fucking dragon. Like they woke a dragon. And then that dragon said, "You come too close. This is too much." And then it created a hero that changed the course of history. Scotland is free not because of William Wallace. William Wallace wasn't going to do it. Scotland was free because of Murren. Because of Murren. Like her sacrifice catalyzed the hero. And if it wasn't for that, like the world wouldn't change. And I think we've experienced something where for some of us, it's come too close. And for some of us, maybe it hasn't come close enough yet. And to the degree by which we can feel the closeness of that and feel actually the pressing and the hot breath of evil that's actually affecting those we love, like really, if we can feel that, we don't have to wait for it. We don't have to wait for our Murren to get our throat slit. Like, can we allow all of these things that are happening to wake the dragon inside of us and to say, like, let's fucking go?
Yeah. Hey man, let's fucking go. I mean, I'm mildly disappointed because I thought there was going to be a sacrifice today. So, is this the time we announce who it is?
It's after the orgy.
Come
obviously.
on up, you are going to be sacrificed. Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of quintessential mundane, everyday, ordinary, like the guy who goes to his doctors in his 30s and is like, hey, by the way, Dave, no offense to any Daves out here, but your cholesterol's a little high, maybe we'll just put you on a little statin, and it's like, okay, and then he comes back in his late 40s and, oh, your cholesterol's really high, we got to change and up and da-da-da, and then he has a heart attack in his 50s, right? It's like these pre-warning signs, like these subtle symptoms that we see in life, that it takes the bigger event for people to actually wake up and go, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I should revisit the way that I'm not taking care of myself. And I think collectively that's what we're seeing is, we felt like, oh shit, like we went from where we thought everything was copiaesthetic and life is good to like, hang on a minute, we got tyrants running the show. This is bullshit. Like I have to wear a mask and I can't. So we thought we were free because then we were realizing, well, now we're not free. But I think the experience of not being free was revealing the fact that we thought we were free when we weren't.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So again, it's still an opportunity. It's still thank you, because how many mothers right now around the world are going, hang on a minute, maybe I should read the ingredients on this syringe that I'm putting into my new baby's arm, right? Whereas before it was just, oh yeah, okay, well the nurse told me to do it, And it's like, oh, what's an aggravant? Like, is aluminum? Does my child have a deficiency of aluminum? Is that why we're putting it in there? Right? So all of these conversations now, people are waking up and realizing perhaps we weren't so free, and it took the adversity and the adversaries to show up, to give us the nudge of, oh, you're on the verge of a heart attack.
Right. I've found for me that, the more that you can identify also with the soul is inextricable from the field of others. Tattva masi, like I am that too. I am you too. You or me living a different life. And if we feel that, then it'll actually catalyze and wake up this force inside of us if we can actually feel what's happening to other people. I had this incredibly powerful moment in a hotel room in Aspen, actually. So I'm in Aspen, and beautiful, like unbelievable service at this hotel, St. Regis.
Was it Samsonite? I was way off.
Samsonite.
Dumb and Dumber
reference. Yeah, no,
I had this awake.
Yeah, Brent Pella gets it. So
Samsonite, I was way off.
This woman comes in, and she's just offering like the most impeccable service. Like so careful, and she was bringing in like ice for the waters that I ordered. I was like, oh, it's okay, I don't need the ice. And she's like, okay, I'm so sorry, sir. But she was so impeccable with her service. Like Asian ethnicity. I didn't know which Asian ethnicity it was. I couldn't tell. And so I just asked her. I was like, hey, where are you from? And she goes, Myanmar. I go, Myanmar? Never met anybody from Myanmar. And she says, yes. And I was like, we don't leave very much. I was like, oh. I was like, well, there's a lot of war in Myanmar, right? She says, yes, there's a lot of war. I was able to get out. I was in a hotel program, and, they had this exchange, and I was one of the lucky ones to be able to leave. I said, okay. I said, well, who's the war with? And she says, the government and the people, sir. And I said, which side are you on? She said, the people, sir. The government and the military, they kill our women and children, and they do whatever they want. She's like, I'm sorry, sir. I started crying. And I realized, like, there's this, like, at that moment, she wasn't just the server bringing me water and lattes and whatever. This was Murren. And like I just was living my day in a fucking luxury hotel room about to go skiing the next day. But here's Murren. And then it's like, what the fuck am I doing about that? What can I do? But it's still like these moments, and they bring this, when I cry like this, which is, I could watch The Notebook 100 times and you're not going to see a tear. I could watch Braveheart for the 150th time and I'm going to cry. Or I could watch 300 for the 150th time and I'll fucking cry. Because it reminds me of who the fuck I am. I'm the person that cares. I'm the person that can see Murren in that waitress from Myanmar.
It's beautiful, right? And it's Braveheart, it's 300, it's a podcast with Peter Crone every time.
I don't know. I cry every time. It's so annoying. 5 for 5. Fuck.
It actually reminds me of our very first podcast. Do you remember when we talked about being pulled out of the basketball game?
Yeah.
So this would be part of his conditioning, right? Which is beautiful, right? Which is this idea that what we touched on, for those of you who'd listened to it, or if you haven't, it's probably worth going back. But it's like this kid who was the MVP, the all-star of his team, and was pulled out by the coach in the last minute or something, and the guy he was guarding scored the winning bucket, right? And so he saw that as his fault, right? Like, and so you can start to see, like an inception, there's no greater virus than an idea, right? That's such a powerful line if you really get it. And so whatever idea is that we create within the identity that is the foundation of who we misidentify ourselves as really becomes the driving force in all of our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors and outcomes, right? If you want to understand the cascade of how things come into creation. And so this beautiful soul took it upon himself, I would assert, in this lifetime, and he's had all of the evidence to show that in some degree, it's up to him, right? And this is why you're all here, because you're inspired by this beautiful man. But at some level, it's also, I would say, just Peter Crone's opinion, it's also where he's stuck, right? So like even Mother Teresa, you know, she had the expression, I know God won't give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he wouldn't trust me so much, right? And so this guy's going to keep coming across, you know, whatever adversities he needs until he realizes it's a choice, right? And freedom to me is synonymous with choice, meaning that if you can discern between am I being misidentified with my form, which is human, which is beautiful, or am I choosing to live from the boundless, timeless nature that is my soul, right? And that is where real freedom exists. And so this man, the impact he has is extraordinary. It's why I show up. It's why I'll do pretty much anything he asks within reason. I don't know what I've never been in an orgy, so I don't know what's gonna happen, and I'll, you know, be kind. But pretty much anything this man asks of me is, you know, it's going to be a yes, right? Because of the size of his heart. But this is also for his own liberation. From the point of view of his divinity, that is the soul that he is, there's an opportunity, I think, for him to also find even more love for the, you know, motherfuckers and the fuck yous, right? Which is a little bit of that still, the absence of forgive them, Lord, they know what they do, right? Again, it's subtle. Does that make sense, right? So the passion, the reason he has all of you beautiful souls here that show up in a really shitty environment, you know, so thank you for bearing with us under these conditions, but, you know, it is because you see the size of the difference this man makes. And in terms of the evolution of the soul that he is, to his true divinity, there would be the expansion of being able to hold the space for everything that his human part still doesn't like. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it
Okay,
does.
so then he will start crying with the notebook. And that's when you know that he's made it.
You know, I think one of the things that's been important for me to get to that is really to step into more faith, and not just faith in myself, which I've always had a lot of faith in myself, but faith in my brothers and sisters, and faith in God ultimately.
Yeah.
And if that's been probably one of the places that constricts me the most, is when I don't have faith and I think I got to do it myself. I got to do it myself.
Exactly.
And then, but when I can step into more faith, be like, oh no, like I can rest. I can actually go and have my time in the desert, and it's okay. I can shut my phone off. Everybody will be okay. You know, like, and I think finally at this point in time, I feel there's enough evidence. And that's the thing about faith, is like, how much evidence do you need to actually have faith?
Yeah.
You know, and for me, there's a certain amount of evidence that I needed that, like, okay, I think we might be okay here.
Yeah.
And now there's just this deep, deep calling to be like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Can you hear it? You hear the difference? So this one's going to shock both him and you. He's saying, right, like, because if you think about it, he's asking, like, okay, I think there's enough evidence now that I can have faith. You know what true faith is? Zero evidence. Did you get that? Did you get that? That's the difference, right? Because his beautiful heart, his brilliant mind is now, like all of us, accumulating evidence for his soul to rest. The part of him that is the warrior, the part of him that is the brave heart, which is beautiful, that is aspirational, that is inspirational, that is making a difference. But to be able to just go a layer or 10 deeper than that, go, oh, hang on a minute. When you're resting and abiding in the soul that you are, there's literally nothing to do and nothing to say. That's true faith. When this image came to me, it was so shocking. I realized, and some of you might not like what I'm about to say, but hopefully you will, for the reason that hopefully will inspire you to look at things differently. Hell is a part of heaven. Do you get that? Like, heaven is so big, God, consciousness, hell is in heaven. Here's the rub. When you're in hell, you don't see heaven. That's how vast heaven is. It can make space for hell. Do you get that? Did that make sense? Or am I just like rubbing my own ego here? Do you get that?
Yeah.
So we think it's one or the other, right? And there's always hell's beneath us, hell's up there, heaven's up there somewhere. Like, whoever comes up with this bullshit, first of all, Does that work if it's a globe, or is that only if it's a flat Earth? I'm still like fucking confused.
Well, we all know it's flat.
It's all flat, right? So okay, so maybe hell is beneath us. No, if you imagine a circle that is heaven, and then there's a smaller circle called hell that's inside of it, can you see that shifts the relationship to how we would otherwise create duality as one is good or bad? The whole world of right, wrong, up, down, good, bad, that we get so bamboozled by. No. It's the circle that contains the yin and the yang. That's where the real power is. That's where the real beauty is. To be big enough to recognize that even in the suffering, even in the tyranny, even in the evil, no, it's okay. That's part of the good shit. Yep. That changes it, doesn't it? Doesn't that change the rules? Because now we're no longer trying to get away from one and go to the other, and that's the pendulum that you're trying to hold up, and then you're exhausted, fuck it, and then you're like, God, I've had green juice, and I've meditated, and I've done it every fucking morning, and I've got my aura ring is awesome, and I've done ice plunging for 8 days in a row, and then, it's like somebody says something slightly wrong, and you're like, fuck it, and you go to the freezer, and you thank God you still got the Haagen-Dazs, and, it's like, fuck the ice plunge. Who came up with this shit? What does it even do for you? It's like... And then it's just this oscillation. And it's like, what about if it could all just exist? What about if we could be so big we can make room for all of it? Revelatory, but that's good. My man is close. I like it. Revelation.
The thing that you're saying about faith requiring, zero evidence, like that's the purest form of faith, right? And that's always been, I think, one of my greatest challenges. And I remember I was just telling the story last night at dinner. In probably 2013, I'm in an ayahuasca journey, and I connect for the first time with the God voice. And I was fucking shocked. Mm-hmm. Like the God presence, God voice is there. And I start kind of like fumbling in surprise, and I'm like, God, you're here. How do you have the time? And God just smiles.
How fortunate he's speaking English.
Yeah, for sure. And God, incepting into my mind, is like, I just felt him smile, like, come on, man, I'm God. Like, of course I have time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, of course you have time. Like, I got it. I was like, I feel like I need to ask you a question or something.
I really think God would have said, what is time, son?
Yeah. And basically is like, come on. And I was like, all right, well, now I'm here and I got to ask a question, because I got my audience. And I said, God, like, what do I need to do? What do I need in my life? And God just very simply said, have more faith, son. Have more faith.
Yeah.
And I've been working on having more faith since that moment. Yeah. And it's been a difficult journey for me. Yeah. It's been a difficult, and I've lost faith, and I'll gain faith, and then I'll lose faith, and then I'll gain, and it'll go up and down because it's still tied to the evidence that's in front of me. Yeah. Rather than being tied to a universal, to God itself.
And if you listen to the words, right, because I get very sort of down into the minutiae of language, he said, I've been working on developing more faith. What is the obstacle? And therefore the I that is under the impression that there's something that he needs to do, which is beautiful conditioning, which is in the way of the faith that already exists. I had a friend the other day, very beautiful, like spiritual person, who had gone through some tough relationship stuff and had found a new sense of vitality through better choices in lifestyle and food, and great mom, and all the things were looking great. And she said, now the only one thing I'm working on is like my finances, so I'm ready to create abundance. Sounds fucking great, right? Who here would like to create abundance? Yeah, why not, right? Well, it doesn't work that way. Because abundance is. You get it? Remember those cards like love is and abundance is, it's there. The thing to do is to uncreate the you that isn't actually aligned with the abundance that is. Okay, we're getting there. Everyone's all right. We're getting, all right, yeah, good. Let's go. So working on faith is the I that is the separate self that doesn't understand its own true nature, which is not wrong. But faith is not something to work on. Faith is. What the work is the dissolution process of the idea of ourself that's in the way of everything that we've ever been looking for. And that's the slippery part of being human. If we're misidentified with the human part, then by default, we have to be in some form of scarcity, inadequacy, and insecurity. So there is a lot to work on. Because of his beautiful conditioning, and again, whether it's the kid in the basketball game that got pulled, or even before that, there would have been semblances of this conditioning getting triggered to turn on, because from my perspective, this is the incarnation that he's here to overcome, is the idea that there's anything for him to do at all, right? How liberating would that be? So there's no evidence that he needs to garner or accumulate. There's nothing that it's incumbent upon him to save. There's no tyrants there to get rid of, no motherfuckers to slay. It's just pure peace. Who's into that? Yeah. Because I believe you, I've worked with so many fucking billionaires and they are not at peace. So it ain't in cash. Jim Carrey will tell you that, right? He said that so many beautiful ways. Like, oh yeah, just if I just had one more Academy Award, I'd be happy, or whatever. Right? So the working on faith is the expression of the individual self that thinks it's incumbent upon it to do something to get somewhere. Right? In the energy of wanting, we're designed to have this feeling of desire, wanting and not wanting, right? All wanting is usually an expression of not wanting. So we're in a state of suffering. We're not at peace in the way that things are, and therefore we create desire, which creates time. If you want something, it's not here, right? It's in the future. That's the energy of wanting. So then you're immediately disconnected from now. I mean, Eckhart Tolle's been talking about the fucking now for 30 years. I mean, when are you going to get it? Right? I'm like, how can the guy keep making money? He just keeps saying the same thing. It's like, it's about the now. That is all there is. From the beginning of the now through the middle of the now to the end of the now.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
That wasn't bad. I've never done an impression of Eckhart. So. Okay, thanks, man. Fuck you.
So
I'm working on it.
One of the things that I think is set up as an obstacle for us to understand this teaching that you're offering is that in the physical body, in this avatar, actually, you do have to work on stuff to get better. I have to work on my free throws to be a better free throw shooter. I have to work on my chess strategy to be a better chess player. I have to work on, the squat rack to get bigger quads. There is an element of practice and work that actually creates the actualization. So it's interesting because I think part of it is we understand this at this one level of density as actually there is a working that's required to actually get better. Mm-hmm. And then at another spiritual dimension, the rules just shift.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand the subtlety of that thing that you've learned does not apply to this game here.
Right.
Same with if you're in an ayahuasca session. Like, you don't work through an ayahuasca session. The work is how much can you let go?
Yeah.
Like, how much can you surrender?
Yeah.
It's a whole different game.
Yeah.
And so understanding that you play one game at one density and you have to flip the game and play a different game at a different density to actually advance.
Yeah. And that's why it's so brilliant and so subtle, right? So it's like, I don't know if it was maybe with Aubrey. We just did a podcast the couple of weeks ago that just came out. And I said, there's always, I think it was with Aubrey. There's always somewhere to get to until you realize there isn't. You get that? There's always somewhere to get to until you realize there isn't. And so that is the beauty of the game. And so, certainly as it relates to the human form, the human experience, whether it's free throws or chess or whatever it is that we want to work on. And one of my favorite distinctions for myself that really hit me at a young age, because we're basically brothers from another mother. We had very similar conditioning. I was, so much involved in the perfectionism in my own ways, less sort of driven by a mission like Aubrey, but, still like trying to impress or do the right things or be the best at whatever it is that I was doing, which was exhausting. And I realized that, I was searching for whatever it is, right? We're searching for love. We're searching for recognition. We're searching for acknowledgement. We're searching for validation. We're searching for security. And then I realized, hang on a minute, when we reside in the nature of who we are, which is complete, timeless, boundless, like limitless, like the real essence of who we are, there's nothing missing. And that's where I realized there's nowhere to get to or there's somewhere to get to until you realize there isn't. And then I recognize, and I'm still here. So we're here, we might as well be fucking awesome, right? So I was like, okay, now the difference between searching, which is being driven by the idea that there's something missing or lacking, which is commensurate with the idea of a separate self, because you're missing the experience of wholeness. So there is something from that perspective missing. It's just illusory. But when I realized, I've never been disconnected, and I can't be disconnected. It's literally impossible. However, I do have this individual meat suit and my own narratives and my own aspirations and goals and dreams. So now I went from searching to exploring. Can you hear the difference in those two words? Because searching implies there's something missing and I'm looking for something and it's time-based. It's out there. It's not with me for sure because I'm looking for it. Whereas exploring is, oh, hang on a minute, this is a fucking fun paradigm. I mean, there's a lot of fucking idiots out there, but that's kind of cool sometimes. And I get to explore what is possible in this realm. Like, oh, you can go to a place called Tuscany, or you can fucking go to Sydney, or you could do all these different things. But it wasn't from a place of lack or fear or scarcity anymore. It was purely from the sheer adventure of what it is to be a human in this incarnation. And that changed the whole rule of the game. That makes sense? So who here came, just be really honest. Remember the exercise, put your hand up, none of this half-ass shit. Who here came as a searcher? Be honest. You're all fucking spiritual seekers, let's be honest. And who's going to leave as an explorer? Yeah! Let's fucking go. Okay.
I love that. All right, I want to open up now, because one of the expertises that you have that I love seeing on display, and I also love the blessing and the provision of allowing some of you individually here to share some place where you're not free. All right, my man Babak over there. Let's go.
Gentlemen, thank you both. My question is this. I find myself oscillating. I touch that boundless, limitless place where I know my essence, and then I fall right back into the limitations of my meat suit. And I don't forget the boundlessness, but fuck, it seems so real when I'm in the meat suit. What are the best practices that you could offer so that we can come back to that place of power and essence with greater regularity?
Okay. And it's Bibek with a B or Bibek?
Babak.
By stop trying to get back to your essence. Right? I mean, that's the flippant response and the very quick one, right? So it shows me a lot about you, and again, I'm just going to be plainly honest because it's all I can do, right? Like your stature, the way you look, like reading your energy, good-looking dude, takes care of himself, all of the behavioral adaptations that you have got on top of what I see as somebody who, in your own way, is trying to be perfect, right? Probably could be speaking to everyone here. Like certainly, myself, a recovering perfectionist, I can speak from my own experience. So your question is being generated from the same energy that has those behaviors be part of your life. Do you see that? So really, in lay terms, it's like you're trying to get it right. Does that make sense? Like in real basic fundamental language, you're trying to get to the good and not be the bad. So implicit in your question is that the meat suit and da-da-da is like when you're in it, you're in it. What are you implying about that? That you're trying to get to the essence, the poetic way of speaking about yourself. What are you implying about both in lay terms?
I guess I am creating a hierarchy that one is better and one is right and one is wrong when both are actually me. And
so you can get rid of the guess as well.
Yes.
You don't have to guess that you're doing that. You just shared it with everyone. We know you're doing that. Yeah. And so my opportunity and the invitation for you is to be, what would it be like for Babak to be okay with both? What might that feel like? Yeah, there it is. Because what are you saying about one versus the other?
That one is undesirable and one is what I should be.
Yeah. And the you that thinks one is better than the other is the obstacle to both.
Thank you.
Did you? But I'm not letting you off just yet. We're not quite done. There's still a residual there, right? So just tell us in the most blatantly vulnerable and honest way you can, what has it been like for you for however 4+ decades you've been living to always try and get the, in your terms, more desirable than less desirable? What's it like to live like that?
To say that it is utterly exhausting is an understatement.
Correct.
To say that it pulls the rug out from me at the most crucial inflection points of my life is again an understatement.
Yeah.
And it is a state of bewilderment because I have touched expansiveness, joy, purity, peace, completion. And then I've also, apropos of nothing, talked myself right out of it.
No, you haven't.
Okay.
But listen, you don't touch expansiveness. Why was that statement inaccurate?
Because I am it.
Okay, welcome. Your expansiveness, pretending you're not, which is why it seems incumbent upon the you that is separated from the expansiveness that you are to maintain the divine, more desirable, which is the opposite of expansiveness. And that's why it hurts and why it's exhausting, because you're denying your true nature, which is all of it. Here's the beauty. When you're okay with all of it, even the undesirable, guess what happens to the undesirable?
Becomes bereft of its power.
Yeah.
Diminished.
Yeah, and it's beautiful language, but I would just as a very subtle invitation, there's somebody in there who's so beautiful and so raw, and bereft is an awesome word, and I love revelatory, and I use fancy words. But for you right now, for where you are, just be a little bit more real.
It gets smaller.
Yeah. You're being smart and fancy and all this is a little bit the part of you that's trying to get the desirable.
No, it's not.
And I want to meet the fucking ugly, you look like a piece of shit in the morning, babak. It's like, that's just as pretty. It's just as special. It's because it's part of you. I mean, who here listened to the fucking podcast I did with Vailana? I mean, our whole story was this, right? Especially for the feminine, the attention to detail of the woman, the primordial need to be the beauty and the man to be the strong, right? Like, these are deep in our DNA. And for her to see, she had this vision of her mum who was this perfection. And, I get a little crass because we got to, I'm like, yeah, because your mum never had period pains or farted or any of that, right? Like, it's real, right? It's like, but if you can make space for that, that's expansion. Otherwise, you're just like, no, I only want the desirable. No. Hi, my name's Babak, and I'm just committed to desirables. It's like, how the fuck is that working out for you?
Could be better.
Yeah. It's going to be really rough in a relationship, I can tell you that. So, why can't you touch the expansive? You already answered the question, but...
As I am it, and to touch implies that it's separate from me.
Correct. So then you're always trying to get to it because, boy, that's so seductive, isn't it? But again, like I said, where does hell exist?
Within heaven.
Great. So where does the undesirable part of you live?
Within the totality of me.
Correct. How much fucking easier is that? I mean, unless you're into being constantly exhausted, have at it, but it doesn't seem so fun. So does that answer your question by realizing there's nothing that I can give as a tip or a suggestion? I'm not a tip guy, really. Just the tip.
I have really enjoyed having just your tip. And I've really enjoyed having just your tip. Thank you.
The orgy has begun.
So, it's a very expansive tip.
Amen. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, we're back. Brent's back on board. Still a motherfucker. Okay, everyone here's like, oh shit.
Peter, I'll let you choose. I'll let you choose with your intuition who you want to call on here.
Let's go with my man there with the tattoo on his inside but left bicep. He seems like a sweet human being. Let's see if we can fuck that up.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. Actually, this man to my right, because of his podcast, I'm taking a class with John Churchill right now.
Okay, cool.
And in the Buddhist tradition, the end of the path is the rainbow warrior, the bodhisattva.
Yeah.
And the warrior has the ability to act.
Mm-hmm.
That's the essence of the warrior energy. And I think it's a lot of what Aubrey's talking about. And being and acting are two sides of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Being acts, and acting is being. Being is not stasis, it's vibration, it's dynamism, it's constant motion. And as I hear what you're saying, there's nothing to do, but there's everything to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about this in terms of power. Power, for me, is the ability to act. What place does power have in how you think about what it is to do versus be?
Okay. I mean, it's a beautiful question. What's your name?
Darren.
Darren. Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind in terms of this, and it's conceptual, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about Darren, right? And just what you're going through even in this conversation real time, right? Like, because your physiology is going through something, right? And it tells me that there's a lot of, your question, you're smart, you're articulate, you're in this group, right? And so what I feel is there's a disconnect between your head and your body. Is that fair?
I think that'd be a fair statement about me often.
Yeah, so, which would be so nice for you and whoever's important in your life for you to reestablish that connection, right? Because I can get caught up in the rhetoric and I can get as intellectual as anyone and I can talk, being and da-da-da. And, being honest, I'm going to say most of it's a crock of shit, right? And in the most beautiful way, because what I'm really committed to is you recognizing what true power is. True power. Which to me is going to be much more synonymous with presence and peace. And what I hear is stories, things you've heard, things you're aspiring to, which is all beautiful, but it's based in time.
Yeah.
Right? The end of the rainbow and whatever happens there and the Buddha and that's all wonderful. But then you're going to be like Babak, where you're just trying to get like this desirable, like yours is just a slightly different story. His might be around his body or money or business or something.
Sure.
But it still creates time. And as soon as you create time, you have to create suffering. And what I'm interested in is being with Darren now. Like, this is all we have.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in where hey, get back to me when you get to the end of the fucking rainbow thing. It's like, then we can sit down and have a chat, right? Real power to me is what we just discussed. That I can be with everything. It doesn't mean I want everything. It doesn't mean that I condone things that are happening in the world. Some of it, as we've discussed, is really unpleasant, and we can be a stand for something. But as soon as we're in resistance to what is, we contribute to the suffering. Do you get that? Like, because it's like we convince ourselves that, but my desires are really, they're better for the collective. The audacity of the ego is like, but I know how things should be. Did you see that? And it's just like, it's so presumptuous that, I didn't get the memo that any of us, were told by the universe, hey, you, Darren, Peter, Aubrey, I'm going to give you the instructions of how the world should be and how everybody should act. But don't we tend to look through that lens a lot? I know how things should be. Here we are on this little ball of mud that is like a speck, and recently heard that there are as many planets out there as there are suns, as there are grains of sand on every beach on the planet. And we're like this little speck of shit on top of that grain of sand. And we're like, no, but I know how my neighbor and my wife should behave. It's preposterous. I'm fucking clueless. I'm doing the best I can. And do you know how much money people pay me to tell them that I don't know? It's amazing. It's the fucking best gig going. Like, no, your problem is you think you're trying to figure it out. Don't try and figure it out. Oh my God, that's amazing. Here's $5 million. Anyway. So I get what you're saying, but I'm much more interested in you. Like, power as a word, like often with my athletes, I'll distinguish between force and power. What we saw there with Babak, he was in the energy of force, trying to manipulate a particular an outcome, which his brain is telling him through whatever his conditioning is, like, and it's good and it's not, this is not good. So I'm going to do everything I can, little on me, to manifest and get the world that is better. Completely denying the fact that, well, yeah, but this stuff is always going to be here and it will just keep, aggravating you until you make space for it. So power, whether you discern it in action or being, or power is a quality of energy. And to me, power, the most powerful person is the one that can be with anything. Right? Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. Does that seem powerful or not?
Yeah.
Super fucking powerful. Right? That to me is true faith. In the absence of not knowing, I'm going to stay at peace. Because I trust that there's an intelligence that far exceeds my capacity to understand what the hell is going on here. And I'm going to do my part because this is a co-creation paradigm. I'm not separate from it, but nor am I God. And to know my place, that I am part, we are all one part of which God is the whole. And so I am that which you are, but you have a different perspective. And far be it from me to have the audacity to think that your perspective is mistaken. So I don't know if that answers your question, but...
No, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, what do you get from it? It's important to me that I hear what you got from that.
I think you immediately intuited that I'm one of those people that kind of am a brain in a vat. I live outside my body a lot. And as I listen to you speak, it is a recognition that my question proceeded from a bit of projection that I have an anxiety that my life won't amount to something if I don't do.
Correct. And I didn't want to put it immediately there because there's a functional anxiety in the way that Darren makes it, right? So there's a very shy, cute little boy who became super smart in the way that he managed to survive. And I have all the compassion for that kid. But as a grown man, it's not necessary. And the thing that you're looking for is not to try and manipulate yourself to become finally accepted, but rather for you to discover the love that is your nature, to accept the part of you that doesn't feel accepted. Versus thinking you have to become someone in order to finally get the recognition, the support, the validation, and the reassurance, which is no different than Babak. It's exhausting. Right?
It is.
Yeah. So what would it be like for you right now with us, with that exhale, to just be here and realize there's nothing that you have to do for us to be able to just love you as you are?
Thank you.
What would that be like?
It would be to feel safe and connected to the ground.
Yeah. How does your body feel versus how when you stood up?
More rooted.
Yeah. Softer, lighter, tone of voice is a little different. That might be the most powerful you've ever been.
Thank you.
Do you see that?
I do.
Because there's nothing... See, one of the factory default settings of the brain is that whatever it is in our life, we're under the impression that whatever's going on, this isn't it. But we're getting there, right? We're all getting there. I'm like, where the fuck are you getting? Isn't it crazy? Like we think that what we want and where we're going to be happy and da-da-da is well, it's there. Right. Have you ever been there? No, but if I try harder... Right? It's crazy. We're always here, but we're like, the amount of energy we all put into not wanting to be here. You start to see we're really not that fucking smart. You're always here. Yeah, I know, but I'm trying not to be here. Right, but you're always here. No, I got that part, but I've got this guy. I'm working with this guru, and he specializes in there. Oh, do you have his number? How much does he do a course? Does he have it like online?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. Whoops, there's a bit of joy.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Careful. You're starting to look happy.
Yeah,
Don't want that. Talk to Babak. He'll tell you how to stay there.
Thanks.
A lot of force.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have. Thank you very much. I have something that's coming to me as a kind of synthesis of how I'm receiving the wisdom that you shared there. In the doing, like I am relating this to sexing.
To what?
Sexing, fucking.
Sex and fucking. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you said sex or sexting.
Yeah, fucking. So in the act, you are doing something, but if
Wait,
you're,
that sounds creepy. It's like you're watching me.
Yeah.
Like in the act, you are doing something. I'm like, you have fucking cameras in my house? Boy, am I doing something, I'll tell you that.
But in the doing of it, you lose when it's really, really at its high, like its most beautiful form. Like you lose the doing, and you're in the fucking of the moment. You're fucking the moment open with another person, right? But like,
Is this the title of the theme of the talk?
yeah. But this is like, it feels like even in the world, if you're in that, like I'm in the eros, I'm in the sexing with life, which may mean that my hips are moving or my whatever's happening. There's things that are, but I'm actually in the energy of the being in the act itself. So and then you also lose it, like if you're in the sexing and you're just thinking about the moment of climax, you fall out of the sexing to a certain degree. You start to get in your head, and then
you
lose
time.
Yeah, you lose the magnetic power of that thing. Whereas if you just surrender to the act without the goal being there, but you're just in the act. So I can extrapolate that to even if you're fighting or even if you're doing whatever else that you're doing, if it feels like you're doing it with the same energy that you would be making love.
Yeah.
You know, like then that's when you're really free. When like all these things that you do, it's like, I'm just making love right now.
Yeah. So beautiful, right? Like, so I would even go further to say it's not that I'm making love, but making love is happening.
Mm.
Right? So in the absence of the I, then freedom is. In the absence of the effort that Babak has to try and get to the desirable versus the undesirable, if there's no him trying to do that, then it's all there and there's no resistance. What was my offering at the beginning where I asked you all, do you have... I'm so good, I got rid of them all and I didn't even have to take you through the exercise. Problems, right? Right, that was my promise as a man of my word. I said, okay, who here has problems? And you all recognize you have problems, right? So my invitation was, would it be cool if you all left here without any problems? Yeah? Everyone's in such a fucking hate. There's no one left. Everyone's gone. We got rid of all the egos. It's like there's just pure being. So what is a problem? Someone give me we've obviously heard a couple, but someone just shout out, like, what is some problem you're dealing with? Just basic. Divorce, great. Divorce is one. What's another one? Money, they're popular, right? Relationships and money, they're always right at the top of the list. Okay, so whatever the money is in the divorce, I want you to consider that occurs as a problem. But it only occurs as a problem, to riff off what Aubrey was saying, because there's a you there. So if you can break down the genesis of what a problem is where there's circumstances, right? So the money is, whoever said money, I guarantee you that their bank account is what it is, correct? And whatever money they have stuck in the pillows or under the mattress is what it is. And whatever their money situation is the way it is, correct? Yeah. Is there a problem with the absolute amount of money that they have? No, it's just what it is. I'm not saying it's great, I'm not saying it's bad, but it is what it is, correct? And is there a problem so divorce is, okay, you have someone who's mediating it, you have attorneys, you have whatever it is. Is there an actual problem in divorce? No, right? It's just what's happening. It's just part of, in this case, the human experience. You get married, doesn't work out, and divorce is one of the things you do. So every problem I want you to consider for all of you, whether it's money, divorce, or whatever your version is based in some sort of circumstances, right? You all have circumstances. Yes? Yes. Then there's this thing called you. That's where all the fucking problems exist, right? Because your circumstances, I want you to consider, this might be shocking. There are no problems in circumstances. There's just circumstances. Not saying they're ideal. I'm not saying they're great. You know, you might have a parent right now who's struggling, who's got cancer, and, you know, they've only got a few weeks to live, but that's still a circumstance. It's not a problem. The problem is there's the you, the circumstance, and then there's the resistance between the two. You only have a problem because you don't want the way your life is. So, if you want to be free of your problems, everything that we've just talked about is to be big enough as a human being that you can be okay with the way things are. That doesn't mean surrender, or it's acceptance while still being a stand for something. You know, I've often said we're all masterpieces and works in progress. The way that my life is right now, I'm pretty blessed. Things are pretty extraordinary, but I'm also moving and there's a lot of shit to handle. It's not a problem. It's just stuff to do. And I could resist it, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this sucks. Or I could get on with it. Not a problem. So I want you to consider none of you have problems. You just have a you that resists the way your life is. Does that help? Yes. Revelatory. Thank you very much. And beautifully said. That is revelatory. It's the dissolution. And so to continue what Aubrey was saying, the love-making of life that he experiences, and he probably has way more experiences from plant medicine too. I've never done that. But I would assert that why those experiences we have as humans are so profound, it's because you're not there anymore. The you that is the foundation of the resistance to life dies. I mean, it's called ego death, right? Like, I mean, in the absence of you, guess what? You don't have any problems. My shortest quote, no you, no problem. Every problem belongs to you. If you notice, wherever you are, your problems are there. So lovemaking, surfing, you know, plant medicine, whatever it is, often these experiences that we're drawn to, they're so profound and they can be transformative. You know, this is why people talk about integration, because it's like nature abhors a vacuum, and a vacuum is the absence of you. So when you come back out of an experience that is so... it's a metamorphosis where you're like, holy shit, like, and this is kind of falling in love, right? We have the same thing. It's like, you notice when you fall in love, like you didn't suddenly have a bigger bank account. You didn't suddenly have a six-packs, abs, and like, you know, like the dream job. It's like, no, but everything's fucking great. I'm like, well, I saw you last week. You were like fucking depressed. Yeah, I know, but I met someone, right? So then you're in this state of love. The circumstances didn't change, but your resistance to life disappeared. And in the resistance to life, you're in heaven. Fucking life open.
Oh, let's go.
Thank you so much both for this incredible conversation. How is your conversation with darkness?
How's the conversation with...
With darkness. With darkness, with something
darkness?
dark. Yeah, that we were talking about, part of the whole picture. How do you approach darkness when it's presented to you?
Hello, darkness, my old friend. Well, describe darkness. Do you mean literal darkness? Darkness as an experience?
I mean, darkness can be depending. I am curious, what is darkness for you?
Well, again, if you understand the yin and the yang and the conversations, like, how would you project your question onto what I was saying to Babak about his trying to reinforce the desirable and avoid the undesirable? Undesirable would probably fall under the bracket of darkness, right?
Yeah.
So what did you get from what I shared with him?
I feel like, from what I understood, he was separating himself from where he is to the possibility of what it is, when in reality we are all of that. It's just acceptance, right?
Yeah, so he's trying to avoid darkness.
Yeah.
And when you try to avoid darkness, what is the energy that I just talked about?
It's just the opposite, like you are even attracting more of that, or resistance to
Resistance,
it. Yeah.
So what's your name?
Maite.
Maita?
Maite.
Where are you from?
Spain.
Okay, beautiful. So consider this as a plot twist. The real darkness isn't the darkness. The real darkness is the resistance to the darkness. Oof, I've never said that before. Now I've got another thing I can quote myself on. right? See, darkness is darkness, no problem. Have you noticed that tends to happen every day, 24-hour cycle? Right? Resisting darkness is like us going outside right now and collectively saying, yeah, but the sun is in the wrong position.
But how about if you don't resist to it, you just accept it? And once that you are accepting it and welcoming it, what is your conversation with it?
Well, there's no conversation if there's acceptance. There's just being with something.
How are you being with something with like that?
Okay. What date is it today? 24th, 23rd of February? 25th. Okay. What did you have for breakfast on January 6th?
Don't remember.
Oh, okay. What's your resistance with that?
I don't think it's resistance. It's just like a memory issue.
It's a what?
A memory issue. I don't remember.
Right. And I would assert it's because you're complete with it. You're not holding on to it. Anything that we resist, we're not okay with. That is the energy of darkness. If you're okay with everything, the conversation becomes, that's when I said there's nothing to do and nothing to say. We're only aware of the things that we haven't yet accepted, which is, again, where I said life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. So wherever there's a resistance to something is the opportunity to find more freedom. So any conversation you have about anything we could assert is actually the resistance to something. Otherwise, you're just at peace with everything.
And when you were talking about evil, like because there is evil, and maybe it's not that resistant, it's just happening, or when you both were talking about evil,
Yeah.
how is that approach in your life?
For me personally,
Yeah.
I just keep being as much fucking love as I can be. I be as much freedom as I can be. And for my own peace of mind, I found the most amount of acceptance for what is and got rid of the audacity that I think that I know how life should be. If it weren't for the quote-unquote evil, and again, it's just through words, right? There's no such thing as a wave on an ocean. The ocean's not like, oh, that's a cool wave. No, that's a small wave. Like, it's just all ocean. And then there's a tornado, or then there's still water. So the same, evil is only existing because of the word evil. Then there's just whatever's happening. And the degree to which we become big enough to make space for all of it is, to me, an expression of freedom and love. And in the essence of freedom and love, anything that we might declare as evil dissipates. Like, I guarantee you, Babek just went outside. He's there. Hello. He's so fucking free. It's like, whatever. This guy, I got whatever I needed. He's like, I'm out. So in the absence of him trying to avoid the undesirable, it just dissipates, because the resistance to the undesirable was actually the resistance to his own conversation about what's undesirable. So darkness, again, as I said, isn't the problem. The resistance to darkness as a categorization of things in life, cancer is darkness, being in debt is darkness, evil is darkness, abuse is dark. Look, whatever you're using as the expression of darkness is just an aspect of life for where we're at right now as a consciousness, which, if we're being honest, isn't that evolved. I mean, you can still drive around town and go and get McDonald's and, In-N-Out, and no judgment, but I don't think that's an expression of the vitality that is the potential of the human spirit, right? We still spray billions of gallons of glyphosate over the food we eat, and that, as last as I checked, isn't necessarily an expression of the radiance of what could be our bodies, right? So if an intelligent species arrived on this planet and looked at us, they'd be like, oh, wow, this group's got a long way to go, right? And yet we have the audacity to think that we know how things should be and that we know how the weather should be. And so we're going to manipulate Mother Nature. So darkness is part of where we're at right now as a collective consciousness that really isn't that evolved. Your opportunity as an aspect of darkness is how much darkness can I reconcile and mitigate within myself. Because you're one of 8 billion. But if you're in a state of resistance, people who worry about human suffering and they're up in arms, like anti-war, the fight against cancer. You seeing the theme? Right? Like when I watch the World Series, right? I've worked with a bunch of, and they all stand up with their placard, like, fight against cancer. What do you fucking think fucking creates cancer? Fighting. It's a brilliant marketing campaign. Right? So if you are, quote unquote, in a state of unrest because of the darkness in the world, find darkness in you. and at least you can be responsible for your corner of that darkness. How can I infuse more love from myself that nudges the collective, however infinitesimal? The butterfly effect. My resistance to life, because, well, it's bullshit what's going on out there. People are so fucking, ignorant, and they're mad, and it's like, okay, and what energy are you contributing to that? So it's a very subtle line between where we become a stand for something, but are you being a stand for something from the very same energy that you're resisting, or can you transmute it by being big enough of a human being who's going to be in the energy of freedom, love, and acceptance, that actually the thing that you don't want starts to dissipate? Two dogs fighting on a bone, have you noticed if one let go, the other one eventually will let go? There's no fight anymore. So whatever your darkness is the opportunity for you to transmute, because when you transmute your darkness, there's less darkness in the world.
Beautiful. So for the remaining questions, really try to get into the personal. I know there's a temptation to be another podcast host here and ask Peter some interesting questions philosophically, theosophically, but really actually allow Peter into your own psyche and into your own consciousness and into what's really going on in the personal, because the personal will then help explain the theoretical so much more. So just an invitation to step into the personal. I'll let you decide, Peter.
Let's get messy. Let's go in the back, white couch.
How do you stop fear or shame from paralyzing you?
So again, in this question, you got to go, how do I? Because I'm asking, because I really want to stop asking philosophical questions. I want to get personal. So
how do I stop fear and shame paralyzing me from doing what I want to be doing?
Okay, great. Who here can relate to that question? Okay, so it's a popular state to be in. So how can I stop fear and shame from paralyzing me, right, is the question. So based on everything that I've shared, what could you garner a little bit in terms of answering your own question for yourself?
Well, what I've heard is stop resisting. But how do you do this practically? How do you stop resisting?
Okay, do you have kids?
Yes.
How old?
20 and 16.
Okay, boy, girl?
Boy 20, girl 16.
Okay, great. Did either of your kids, whilst you saw them growing up and you saw the arc of their whole existence from birth, right? Did at any point your kids display any fear or shame?
Yes.
Give me one example, especially for the girl.
She just started driving and we went on the highway and she couldn't merge properly and somebody was beeping at her. And she got super ashamed, freaked out, a lot of emotion. She's like, I'm never going on the highway ever again. And it was very intense.
Okay, and were you in the car with her at the time?
Yeah.
And what was your response to her?
Well, I froze a little bit at the beginning, but then I encouraged her and I said, this has happened to everybody, just like the normal thing you would say to relate to her. Mm-hmm. I would listen to her first.
Yeah.
Let her express all the emotions.
Yeah.
And then I would break down and step by step how to avoid that in the future. Mm-hmm. While validating that her emotions and all of she was doing was okay. It was not scary.
Beautiful.
It was not bad.
Beautiful mother. So how would you describe that energy and emotion you had towards her?
Love.
Yeah, love and acceptance.
Love and
right?
acceptance, yeah.
Okay, so here's your daughter. For the sake of this conversation, she represents fear and shame, albeit just in this isolated event. But my assertion is, because she's an extension of you, she's going to have that in many other arenas, some of which you would have been present for, some of which you won't, right? That's just the arc of her journey. But she represents fear and shame. You as the mother figure, quote unquote, the bigger self, your true self, sees fear and shame, no problem, because it's over there. You bring love and acceptance to it. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And to whatever degree she was able to integrate it or accept it is the degree to which she found some relief, and then maybe she will go on the highway again, and maybe next time she merges she has a little bit more confidence or whatever it might be. So what is your fear and shame about? Where have you had fear and shame? Give us an incident.
It's shameful.
Shit, you better remember, otherwise this really isn't going to work.
I know.
That would be really shameful.
Let's say singing again in public.
Singing again in public.
Yeah.
Okay, so that implies what?
I used to be, as a teenager, I used to perform, and I somehow, when I moved from Ukraine to United States, I lost that part of me. And I think it's like even being in public and talking and saying what I know is also shameful. Like I always feel like I don't know enough, I'm never good enough, and nobody needs to hear what I have to say or how I have to sing.
Okay, so when you watch the room, who here sometimes thinks that they're not good enough and don't know enough? You're really not that special. Okay, so there was a lie in your statement and your story. So what can you detect the lie about what you said about you used to sing in Ukraine and then...
And then when I moved to United States, I lost it.
Okay, so where's the lie?
I lost it.
Correct. Why is that a lie?
Because I still have it if I want to have it.
Correct. So then if you didn't lose it, what happened?
I'm choosing not to use it.
Well, it's not a conscious choice. It's a reaction based from fear. So what happened that made you think you couldn't sing or that you're not good enough or that you don't know enough yet? What did you hear, or what did you hear from someone else, your own head?
Well, that I'm not good enough. My voice is not good enough. Maybe.
So who told you that?
Actually, my mom.
Okay, great. That's okay. What just hit you? That's tough when it comes from someone like that. It's okay. This is beautiful. We're here. Can you remember where you were? What room you were in?
I don't know. It's like it's a lot of emotions coming up and a lot of visions.
Yeah. Okay. What's the most prominent vision right now? Where can you remember first hearing that or feeling it? This was still in the Ukraine?
Yeah.
So you're in your family home? Is there any one memory that comes to mind where your mom said something?
I think it was not. I was not pronouncing the R correctly because in Ukraine it's a different way of pronunciation, and as a child it's like you usually don't pronounce it correctly. And she was always sort of like ashamed of it and was trying to change that.
Got it. Okay. And was it the R was particularly when you were singing, or was it speaking, or both?
I think speaking or both. I just remember like a lot of relatives, and I'm performing or doing something as a kid on the chair.
Yeah.
And they're just laughing, and she like they're enjoying it, but she's not.
Got it. Perfect. I get it. I'm with you. And so, what was your experience? Roughly, how old were you?
3, 4.
Okay, and what did that feel like when she points that out and then everyone else is laughing?
Like I'm not good enough for her.
Okay, that's how that's what you thought, but how did that feel in your body?
It was just like a tension in the chest and in the stomach. That's the physical sensation.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, perfect. No, you're answering the question perfectly. So tightness, what happened? Did you leave the room? Did you start crying?
No, I just
Froze. Okay, perfect. So fight, flight, or freeze, folks. Sympathetic, right? Okay, great. And so that's one. Can you remember any other incident where your mum had said something about R's or singing?
Well, but she would always say that my brother has a better voice than I do.
Okay, great. Yeah, so were you singing when she said that the first time in front of your friends and family?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were performing. And prior to that moment, what was your experience? Before you heard whatever your mum said, how did you feel?
Well, that was exciting.
Yeah.
And like freeing.
Yeah, free, right? Yeah. So I want you to consider that has never gone anywhere. Your nature is freedom. So that's the first thing to recognize. You never lost anything. None of us have. What happens is we accumulate something that then sits on top of whatever it is that ironically we're looking for, in this case, freedom. So what did that little girl decide at that moment?
That I'd rather be quiet.
Amazing. So that's the byproduct of what you decided. That's the way you survive. Because you're not good enough is not true. That's not the main thing. But that girl decided something at that moment that then you chose to be quiet as a survival coping strategy. So if you have to be quiet, what must she have felt like at that moment? What did you decide at that moment?
So if I'm quiet and don't embarrass her, then she love me more.
Yes, that's a way that you're trying to get something. But what did you say about you that means you should be quiet? If someone's trying to be quiet, and we could say they're trying to hide, right? Mm-hmm. What must they be saying about who they are in an environment? If you're trying to hide, you don't feel what?
Accepted.
Yes, and if you're not accepted, but it's a little bit more for you, it's a little heavier. Like someone could be in here right now not feeling accepted, but they don't have to hide. If you're hiding, why would anyone hide? Because they feel what?
I don't know.
Try on scared.
Scared, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You said fear and shame at the beginning. So scared is synonymous with fear, just another way of saying it. I want everyone to consider the two predominant emotions that humans have is hurt and scared.
Hurt and scared, okay.
So you were
I
hurt.
was actually hurt, yeah.
You're very hurt. And then you were very scared.
Yeah.
Because you're exposed and you're incredibly vulnerable and you're very young. And you've gone from excitement to holy shit, something just went wrong. So if you have to hide and you have to be quiet, what are you saying about yourself in that environment? If you're scared, then you're not what? You hear what
I'm
they
not
say?
safe.
Not safe.
Yeah.
Isn't fear an expression of not feeling safe?
Yeah.
You see that? Now, with you, because of the shame, not safe, a lot of people have, predominantly the feminine, because in a patriarchal world where there's been centuries of abuse, it makes sense for a woman not to feel inherently safe. It's part of the factory settings of the brain. But for you at that moment, it's not safe. But for you, it's a little heavier. Because see, when a kid grows up in an environment, and I'm sharing this because I'm sure there's many people in this room who experience this, where the household is dangerous, the father is drunk, screaming, the parents are fighting, that kid feels unsafe. Can everyone relate to that? Who here really can relate to that, like genuinely, right? So when a kid grows up in an environment where it's like a lot of hostility, their experience is they're not safe. However, you're doing something, you're performing, and then you experience. So you're not safe, and if you have to hide, it's not safe what?
To be me.
Bingo. Say that again. Now say the whole thing.
If I have to hide, it's not safe to be me.
It's not safe to be me. Just say that.
It's not safe to be me.
Say it again.
It's not safe to be me.
That's the world you live in. What's it like to walk around as a mother of two beautiful kids in a great community like this? At the deepest level, it's not safe to be you. What is that like?
It's scary.
How do you adapt? How do you cope?
I hide.
Yeah. What else?
I am quiet.
Yeah.
I also lie
You lie. Yeah.
or pretend.
Yeah. You have to protect yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Do you see lying folks make sense if who she is it's not safe to be her? Fear and shame. Fear, not safe. Shame, because there's something wrong with her. It's not safe for her to be her. I really want you to get the gravity of this, because a lot of you will have something very similar. Imagine walking around. How old are you?
44?
Was that a lie?
No, I just switched. So like I'm 44, right? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What is it like, imagine, for a woman for 41 years who's been walking around on a planet? Is that your husband? Or
My partner.
Partner, okay. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he will be able to not only hold space for this, understand this, but he's going to have a new partner. Like, literally. My intention here, if I do my job, is that the you that walked in here, like I said at the beginning of my masterminds, will not survive this conversation. So, walking around, it's not safe to be you. We can all feel it, right? Can everyone get the gravity of what it must be like to walk around on a planet where it's not safe to be you? The way that you would manipulate yourself, the way, like she said, that she would have to hide, she would lie, she would pretend. The terror that is the experience of, especially in an environment where there is an authority figure that's predominantly feminine because it came from the mother. And then don't take this personally because it's not a problem, because as soon as you shift, your kids will shift, but your daughter is an extension of that same lineage of energy. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's not a fault thing. That's a responsibility. That's a power. For you to go, holy shit, as you shift, she will shift. And you don't even have to leave this room. That's the entanglement of energy. She will feel it and you will see it. So that's the other bonus of this, is that your daughter is going to step out of that legacy of fear and shame as well. And of course, conversation will help reinforce that. Okay, so we get the whole world of it. So you were born in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I were to cut you open, am I going to find a physical manufacturing label made out of whatever material, wood, plastic, metal, doesn't matter, that says, what is your name? Sorry again?
Lena.
Lena, L-E-N-A?
L-E-N-A. Mm-hmm.
Lena. Am I going to find a manufacturing label that says, Lena, born in Ukraine, it's not safe for her to be her?
Yeah. Still.
Can we get a fucking paramedic in the house? You got bigger fucking problems, I tell you.
No. I feel that it's shifting already.
Yeah, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Because it's all a lie anyway. That's the good news. That's why it's so tiring to sustain the ego, because it's all fucking bullshit. Okay, so I'm going to ask you again. You can only say yes or no. If I cut you open, am I going to find a manufacturing label, physical, inside of you that says, Lena, born in Ukraine, it's not safe to be me?
No.
I'm not, am I? So where does that exist? Because it's not a truth in terms of the hardware of your body, but it is a reality because it dictates how you think, feel, and act. So where does it exist?
In my head.
Correct. And what is it made of? It's not safe to be me. What is that made up of?
Energy.
That are the
Words.
deepest words. Perfect. Words.
Uh-huh.
I hope everyone is tracking here, because if you really are, you will all walk out as completely different human beings. So it's made up of words in your head, what we call the mind, which is a space. So in the space that your soul occupies, you are confined by the words called, it's not safe to be me. Boundless, limitless, timeless essence of who you are, confined by a conversation called, it's not safe to be me. And then we get the byproduct of that, which is hiding, lying, pretending, playing small, not singing anymore, all the things that that little girl was passionate about, right? Do you see it? Now, if it's in your mind and it's just words, it's, as you said, energy. It's literally vibration, sound. You can only answer yes or no to this question. If it's just words in your mind, is it true that who you are literally is that it's not safe to be you?
No.
It's not, is it? It's a story. It's a conversation. So if that's not true, that's not the essence of who you are, hence it's a lie. If it's a lie, it dissolves, it goes. What becomes available for Lena in the absence of the lie that it's not safe to be you? That's gone. You can't look through the lens of it's not safe to be you anymore because it's a lie. It was a pretense. And now I'm introducing you to a new world that you're not familiar with. So just take a minute, but feel what might become available for you as a being in the absence of that constraint. How would you feel?
Limitless.
Say it a little louder for the people in the back.
Limitless.
Started with fear and shame, and we're just tapping into limitless. I don't know about you, but I got tingles.
I have goosebumps. Yeah.
If I can sing Darkness, my old friend, I'm terrible at singing. Then, yeah, limitless. Where does fear and shame live in limitlessness?
Nowhere. It doesn't exist.
How does your body feel right now?
Light.
What
I feel
else?
like I'm on MDMA.
Someone once described me as human ayahuasca, so I'll take that. I'm just expanding my psychedelic realm. Yeah, limitless. Welcome to you. So is it true that it's not safe to be you?
No.
Give us some evidence.
I'm talking and
Right
being
now.
me right now.
In a group. Okay, with all due respect, I'm fucking conducting this conversation. The girl just stepped into fucking Limitless. Could you all just not push her straight back into fear? I mean, could you just give her a minute to enjoy some freedom? She's had 40 fucking years of suffering.
Thank you. Maybe tomorrow.
Yes. So I want you to understand, and for the sake of everybody here, thank you first of all for your generosity. And it shows us the beauty and the courage of who you truly are, even in the face of the fear that you thought was your life experience, right? Your nature is so vast that it can make space for fear, just like you did for your daughter when she was merging onto the highway, right? So are you going to be free of fear for the rest of your life? Probably not. But the limitlessness of what you just tapped into is the space that is vast enough that fear can have a presence from time to time. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So now, not only does fear and shame not exist for the moment, at least, you're feeling the lightness and the expansiveness and the limitlessness, but you can allow fear and shame to show up if they do. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And that's even more limitlessness, because now you're making space for all of it. It's okay.
Thank you.
So now what? Just to finish, you're welcome. What do you see being possible for Lena now as you navigate the next 41 years of your life? What might be, and again, it's a proposition, it's a projection, what might be available for you in the way that you could live for the next 4 or 5 decades of your life? How would you feel? Who could you be?
I could be on stage singing. In fact, I just had a vision that I'm in a sphere in Las Vegas doing some sort of meditative singing and with visuals, and it's full.
I mean, that's pretty epic, isn't it? Did that visual just come to you?
Yeah.
Folks, if that doesn't show you the power of, like, when we step out of the constraints of a conversation, like at the beginning, I was using this tent as a metaphor, right? As an analogy of the space that we live in. In the absence of her constraint, a new vision was able to show up that was always, always available, but not from within the constraints of her perspective. See, abundance is, freedom is, power is, they all exist. Our role as human beings is not to try and get them, but to remove the idea of ourselves that is the obstacle to them that already exist. So did you ever lose anything when you left the Ukraine?
No.
You didn't?
No.
That same joy, that same excitement, that same complete and utter freedom of that 3-year-old expressing herself, whether you can say the fucking R's or not, I don't care. It doesn't matter. That freedom never left you. What happened is you accumulated somebody's perspective.
Yeah.
When people say your dreams aren't possible, have compassion, because it's their own limitations they're showing you, not yours. And your mother, through her own fear and shame, through her own feeling of inadequacy, was just superimposing as part of the arc of your journey. Why you're here as a being in this incarnation is to remind yourself that there's nothing that is not safe about you. There's nothing that you can't do. But you needed that experience as a catalyst, as the darkness, which is the opportunity for your soul to remember its own limitlessness. And I feel very privileged and honored that I could be part of that conversation to remind you that there's absolutely nothing that can stop you other than your own conversation. And I expect a ticket to the sphere.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Who got something from that? Right? Amazing. Can we just talk to the partner for a second if he's happy to chat? He's like, oh, shit. What'd you get from that?
I think you hit the nail on the head for her. Like, we're getting ready to start our own business, and she's really afraid to, like, step into her power.
Yeah.
And I think for her specifically, I've been pushing her to do karaoke for a year or two now.
Yeah.
Because I know she has a beautiful voice.
For sure.
But at the fear of being on stage again, driven by the trauma that she's received.
Yeah.
And it's just not the support she's had from her family, obviously I'm contributing to that through my fear too.
Of
and
course.
more of what she called, there's a Ukrainian phrase around Spanish shame, where like you're embarrassed for her.
Yeah.
And sometimes when she doesn't participate in things, I bring up my flaws that reinforce that energy in her sometimes.
Yeah.
So me, as I step more into my masculine to support her and her creativity, I think it helps us both grow. And as I grow and as she grows, like we're kind of becoming unstoppable as a couple.
Yeah. And consider beautiful. So first of all, a couple of things in your languaging that's going to help. Receiving trauma implies that it came from outside. It didn't. Right? We arrive with constraints. Her mother was the teacher, the catalyst to turn on the constraint that she's here to transcend. Otherwise, you're a victim of something, and that's going to leave you powerless. And it's not that you're becoming unstoppable, you're unstoppable. What you're unbecoming is the idea that you're not. So subtle, right?
Very.
You are unstoppable. You can't become unstoppable. You are abundant. You can't become abundant. You're just dissolving whatever the lie is that has us inhibit the limitless nature of who we are. So that will change the way you communicate with her, and especially now she's already a different human being. She's actually ironically more the her that is her true nature. So in the absence of any constraint, there is just freedom. Whether she has a beautiful singing voice or not, I'm sure she does, but it's irrelevant. What's important is that she has the freedom to just be self-expressed. And then people will think whatever they think. Some people think she has the voice of an angel, and some people are like, well, I don't need to go to that show again. It's irrelevant. Okay? Didn't receive any trauma. Received the opportunity to expose the constraint with which she and you arrived. Can everyone see how subtle but important it is to make that distinction? Because otherwise it's always your parents' fault. Then you're a victim. There's no power there. Oh, I curated this experience and I have the parents that are perfect for me to be able to trigger whatever constraint I'm here to transcend. That changes the whole game of how we relate to our folks or to anyone. Thank you. Enjoy your new partner.
Peter, these are always epic and legendary, my brother.
It's such a joy to be with you, my friend. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your vulnerability, for everyone who shared. I hope you will realize you've got no fucking problems. And if you do, don't come to me. Because it's all made up. Thank you. So much love. I think collectively we did a pretty good job of getting rid of some global suffering here.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, my brother.
Thank
Honored
you.
to walk this path with you. And all of you beautiful people as well. Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.